Good evening. This is Brooke Baker, the Director of Finance and Operations, and welcome to the final budget presentation for the 2025-2026 school year. During tonight's agenda, we will take you through the budget calendar and timeline. We will present the revenue and expenditure details, review the district's tax information and the impact to the taxpayers, and we will go over long-term projections before summarizing and returning back to our Finance Committee meeting. The budget calendar is driven by dates established by the state under Act 1 of 2006. This legislation has two main objectives. First, it limits school districts on how much they can raise taxes by providing them a cost of living index. The second is they provide direct property tax relief to homeowners with gambling revenue. To receive the tax relief, there are important dates that the taxpayer will need to follow. Applications are mailed out to homeowners by December 31st of each year by the Allegheny County Assessment Office. The taxpayer must fill out these forms and return them back to the assessment office by March 1st for it to be applicable for the year's tax rebate effective July 1st. By May 1st, the Pennsylvania Department of Education notifies the district of the amount of their state allocation of property tax reduction funding. The district then applies that tax relief on tax bills that are mailed out for July 1st of each year. Revenues for the 25-26 final budget are projected at $62,237,494. This includes a 3.9% tax increase from last year, which is below our Act 1 index of 4%. This would bring our millage rate to 22.0750. We are seeing an increase of 2.6% in our revenues over last year. However, the last two budget years, we were seeing over a 4% increase. This presents a new financial challenge for Quaker Valley, which we will discuss in upcoming slides. On the expenditure side, the budget totals $63,009,187, reflecting a 3.87% increase from the prior year. This is slightly lower than the last two budget years, which is a positive trend. The resulting shortfall of $771,693 will be covered by the district's fund balance if necessary. This pie chart illustrates the distribution of Quaker Valley's $62.2 million in revenues broken down by local, state, and federal sources. As you can see, we rely heavily on local revenue, which makes up nearly 82% of the budget. State subsidies and reimbursements account for approximately 17%, while federal sources contribute less than 1% to our revenue budget. This slide provides a snapshot of our local revenue sources. The lines highlighted in green represent our real estate-related revenues, which include our real estate, interim real estate, and delinquent real estate taxes. The blue highlighted lines indicate our earned income tax and our delinquent earned income tax. Real estate and earned income taxes are our two largest local revenue sources, which is why we review them monthly during our board meetings. In the next few slides, we will discuss the challenges we are currently facing with both real estate and earned income tax revenues, which make up 75% of our local revenue budget. This slide illustrates how our real estate revenue is calculated. We start with the budgeted assessed value, multiply by our new millage rate, subtract the property tax relief funding, and then apply our collection rate. With a 3.9% millage increase, our projected real estate revenue totals $41,274,043. Here we have our budget assessed value history. We are currently experiencing over a $13 million drop in assessed value. The budget assessed value is a key component in calculating our real estate revenue. Over the last 5 years, we have averaged an annual increase of 1.29%, and over the last 10 years, the average increase was 1.09%. As you can see, for the 25-26 school year, we are looking at a negative 0.66%. While the district anticipated a decrease, we did not anticipate negative growth. Because of this significant decline, we had no choice but to raise the millage rate to help bridge the resulting revenue gap. This remains one of the biggest challenges as the decrease continues to impact our real estate revenue. Unfortunately, this lower baseline will also affect future years. In our long-term projections, we anticipated the 25-26 school year at a 3.4% tax increase. This slide demonstrates that if the budget assessed value had followed the trend of prior years, we would have remained on track with that 3.4% increase. In the first scenario, we applied the 5-year average assessed value growth of 1.29%. Had that trend continued, a 3.9% tax increase would not be necessary, as it would have generated more revenue than needed. We would have remained at the 3.4% even with a small shortfall. The second scenario uses the 10-year growth of 1.09%. Even under that assumption, the shortfall would have been minimal and we would have stayed and maintained and planned the 3.4% increase. Quaker Valley is receiving $1,196,825 in property tax relief. This is an increase of $159,883 from the prior year. This is good news for those who qualify for the homestead-farmstead exclusion. While tax rates are rising, the net impact on some homeowners will be softened by this credit. As required, the district passes this funding directly to taxpayers in form of a tax credit on their property tax bills. For the 25-26 tax year, eligible homeowners will receive a credit of $329.52 based on assessed value exclusion of $14,927.40. This bar graph shows the history of our earned income tax EIT collections. There were some anomalies during the COVID years, but after finishing the 23-24 below our budget and observing a similar trend so far for the 24-25 school year, we were taking a more conservative approach. Our 25-26 EIT budget is aligned more closely with the actuals from the current and prior years. Here is another slide that looks into our EIT history. EIT is collected on wages, salaries, and other earned income from individuals who live within the district. Unlike property taxes, EIT can fluctuate from year to year depending on changes in employment levels and income. As shown in this table, the year-over-year percentage change in EIT has not been consistent. Some of this variability stems from the economic disruptions caused by COVID, as stated in the previous slide. In addition, factors such as local job growth, wage trends, and retirements all fluctuate EIT revenue. For example, when higher-earning individuals retire, it can reduce the overall wage base and lead to lower collections. Unfortunately, we are not seeing the increases that we have in the past. Our state revenues make up 17% of the revenue budget. The items highlighted in red are subsidies we receive from the Commonwealth. They are the basic ed funding, special ed funding, and Ready to Learn. The one item that is highlighted in green is our property tax relief funding, and all the other revenue lines are reimbursements we receive from the state. We are seeing a small increase in state funding compared to last year, mostly due to an increase in property tax relief funding. As a result, the overall impact of the state funding on our budget continues to be limited. Here is a look into all the Allegheny County school districts and their aid ratios. These ratios are used to determine level of financial support districts receive from the state. Unfortunately, due to our higher local wealth indicators, Quaker Valley is considered a relatively low aid district and therefore receives less proportional support compared to other districts. Federal revenue continues to make up a very small portion of our overall budget, which is less than 1%. We currently receive federal funding in Title I, II, III, and IV. We also participate in the School-Based Access Program, which is a program that helps students who are Medicaid eligible. Access is one of the areas we are seeing a decrease in. This decrease is mainly due to the change in their program requirements that is making it harder to receive reimbursement for Medicaid costs. Even though we are seeing less funding this year, this is still a big portion of our federal revenue budget, and we will continue to run the program. Here is the recap on the challenges that Quaker Valley is facing for the revenue budget. Our revenues have increased over 4% in the last 2 budgeted years. However, for the 25-26 school year, we're only seeing an increase of 2.6% for our revenues. This smaller increase is due to the budgeted assessed value dropping over $13 million over last year, which equates to a decrease of 0.66%. The millage increase is necessary to help fund that revenue gap. We have seen a drop in EIT collections, therefore we're budgeting more in line with our actual collections this year, which is only an increase of 1.58%. We are also seeing a decrease in our payment in lieu of taxes and in our federal funding for our school-based access program. Our total expenditures are just over $63 million. This includes personnel costs, special education services, charter school payments, and other mandated expenses. Salaries and benefits and debt service alone account for more than 77% of our overall expense budget. The next few slides will provide more detailed breakdown of these major cost drivers. Here we have our expenditure budget mostly broken down by department and buildings. Salary and benefits make up 67% of our total budget, which are fixed costs due to contractual obligations. This year, we're seeing a 5.7% increase in our medical insurance costs and 3% for our dental and vision. We have budgeted $1.9 million to be transferred out to our food service and capital projects funds. This transfer is necessary to help fund our 5-year capital plan. We will be contributing $565,000 to support the Sewickley Public Library, which is a $10,000 increase from last year. For our building budgets, we are seeing decreases in our 2 elementary schools as some curriculum items have been shifted to the instruction and learning budget. Our middle school and high school are a little higher from last year due to typical inflationary increases. For the instruction and learning budget, we're seeing a larger increase due to the new math curriculum and the absorption of the elementary curriculum costs. This is a department where budgets may fluctuate depending on what curriculum items need bought each year. Our special education outside placement costs have increased. This is an area that we don't have much control over due to individualized educational programs that are set in place for students. Another area we don't have much control over is cyber charter costs. These costs have increased as we have seen a few students who moved into the district that were already attending a cyber charter school. We are seeing higher utility costs, especially for electricity, due to rate changes that went in place last January. We have adjusted the budget to reflect those current rates. For our central and business office budgets, there is a 9% increase due to the addition of Hanover Research and our new lease agreement with Leetsdale Industrial Park, along with higher insurance premiums. The overall expense increase is 3.87%, which is below the 4% increases we have seen the last 2 budget years. There are several unfunded or underfunded mandates that continue to drive significant costs in our budget. First, pension costs. Pension contributions account for 14% of our total budget. Since 2014, these increasing costs have been responsible for over 30% of all tax increases, placing the long-term burden on local revenues. Secondly, we have special educational costs. These costs make up 13% of our budget, where state and federal funding only cover less than 19% of these costs. This gap continues to grow each year, placing more pressure on local taxpayers. Another major cost driver is charter school tuition. The current tuition-based funding formula is outdated. It ties payments to district spending rather than actual charter costs. The governor has proposed a flat $8,000 tuition rate for regular ed cyber charter students, which, if this was enacted, would provide meaningful savings for school districts across the state, including ours. This bar graph illustrates the steady and consistent increase in employer pension costs mandated by the state. These rising costs are a significant budget pressure as they are largely out of the district's control and must be funded through local tax dollars. For the 25-26 school year, the employer contribution rate is 34%, which has been pretty consistent with the previous 2 years. However, as salaries increase, the total dollar amount the district must contribute to the pension system also rises. While we do receive a 50% reimbursement from the state to offset those costs, it continues to be a significant and growing cost driver in our budget. This bar graph illustrates the steady growth of our special education costs over time. While the district receives support through the state special education subsidy, federal IDEA funds, and access reimbursements, these sources fall significantly short of covering actual expenses. In fact, we are funding over 80% of those costs through local revenue. As special education needs increase, this growing gap between mandated services and available funding continues to put pressure on our overall budget. This bar graph is a good illustration on cyber charter school costs and the funding we receive from the state. In the 24-25 school year, the state reinstated a cyber charter subsidy which provided us a little over $32,000. And as you can see, according to the bar graph, we haven't received that type of subsidy since the 10-11 school year. However, the subsidy is not included in the governor's proposed budget for the 25-26 school year. Instead, he has proposed the flat tuition rate of $8,000 per regular ed cyber charter student, and if that were to be passed, it would save Quaker Valley around $125,000. Here is a recap on our expenditure budget. First, we have salaries, which make up 67% of our total budget. This is typical in education where staffing is the greatest resource but also the largest expense. Secondly, we continue to see impact of unfunded or underfunded state and federal mandates. These mandates often require local districts to absorb the costs. And lastly, we have our debt service, which is tied to long-term investments in our facilities in the new high school project. This has been carefully planned to ensure financial sustainability. The local tax effort is a primary source that pays for the expenditure budget. However, Quaker Valley remains ranked in the bottom third of the county with their millage rate. We also use equalized millage, which is a metric that expresses tax rates as a percentage of market value. It is used to provide realistic comparisons of actual market value taxing efforts across district lines. Generally, high equalized mills represents a higher tax burden than low equalized mills. Quaker Valley ranks in the lowest quartile when compared to equalized mills in taxing efforts. We're able to show the taxing effort on this comparative data chart. Quaker Valley is highlighted in yellow, so you will see where we're ranked among our peer schools in Allegheny County relative to millage rate and equalized mills. So even with a 3.9% tax increase, we do remain near the bottom relative to our tax level and tax effort. Now that we reviewed the budget details for the 25-26 school year, we now can look into our long-term budget projections, which includes operational and financing costs associated with the new high school, includes capital needs for all of our current facilities, includes maintaining high-performing school programs and services, and our strategic long-term planning ensures that we will have sight to pay for the significant investment of the new high school without crowding out funds necessary to maintain existing buildings and educational programs. Here are long-term budget projections for expenditures. These projections do include a cost of living increase with historical trends at all departments and categories. I do want to note this is based off data that we know as of today, and these long-term projections will be reviewed each year and adjustments will be made if need be. I would like to highlight the areas that are associated with the high school project. First, we'll take a look at the debt service and fund transfer lines. These two lines are where we have built the capacity to pay for all capital improvements for the district and the debt service associated with the new high school. Each year, Mr. Gauthier presents a 5-year capital plan to adjust these needs for all of our buildings. We do anticipate our capital plan to be fully funded in the progression to the debt service line associated with school opening. The money on these two lines may shift in the future depending on when we need to borrow that money. This could depend on project timeline, cash flow needs, and market rates. This does show a base projection of where the debt service is likely to land. Moving down to facilities and building utility budgets, you will see a progression of expenses to these two categories relative to the square footage that is associated with the new high school facility. The next line down is transportation, which includes extra shuttle runs from the new high school to the existing stadium facility. For our long-term budget projections for our revenues, all categories are projected based on historical trends. With a new high school, we are projecting an increase in community and private use of our facilities, which will increase the rental line, which is located under local revenues. Since our future revenue budget relies on local taxes, let's take a look at those projected millage rates. Here are our long-term budget projections pertaining to our millage rates. This chart includes a historical look at both the tax rate and the Act 1 inflationary index to note our district trends. You will see that our future tax rate increases, which includes funding for both our operational and financing for our high school project, which is projected to stay within that Act 1 index. However, these millage rates have changed since last year due to the smaller increase in our revenue budget, which is mainly due to the budget assessed value dropping over $13 million. As I said earlier tonight, this drop in assessment will affect future years. This will be an area that we will reevaluate each year to see where our budget assessed value is to determine the millage increase. The Act 1 index does decrease the next 4 years, therefore we will most likely see an average increase of 3.4% between now and the 2029-2030 school year instead of the 2.9% projected in the past. All tax increases that are projected will be within that Act 1 index through school year 2029-2030. Here is the 2025-2026 budget summary. The budget does include a 3.9% increase in real estate taxes, which is less than the Act 1 index permitted by law. Owners of a $200,000 home would pay $13.98 more per month than property taxes. However, those owners of the $2,000 home that have been approved for the homestead exclusion will receive a higher credit on their tax bill. Their net impact would be to pay $10.37 more per month in taxes. And lastly, the tax rate of 22.0750 mills remains in the lowest third in Allegheny County. I am happy to recommend our 2025-2026 final budget for adoption. Thank you for everyone's time and attention.